Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cyber Advisor Live. This week's topic is going to be hardware as a service and what that means. I'm here with James. Usually I'm behind the camera, but today I'm going to be talking with James, and we're going to kind of go through this so everybody understands.
Yeah. So we're going to go through kind of all the as a service offerings. We've got Todd as a service right now. He's on the front side of the camera.
I am.
Nice thing about as a service is you can always get rid of it.
That's
so
right.
We're going to get rid of him next week.
That's right.
Hopefully. But I think one of the things that's really kind of evolved in the IT space over the last call it 8 to 10 years has been the as a service model. It's something that we weren't hearing about a lot across the whole IT space or just in general. Now everything's as a service, right?
Right.
Life insurance as a service. Just kidding. That's not really a good idea.
It's not a good idea.
But software as a service, hardware as a service. We do firewall as a service. You get into like the cloud offerings, and they talk about things like infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. Everything's as a service now, right? And then why does that actually make sense? Because you're seeing like your pocketbook's just flying out. All this money's going out. It's not like before where you went and bought something. It's essentially the equivalent of leasing a car. So
it comes with everything, just like if you did lease a car, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about, let's kind of go back into, let's go as software as a service first.
Okay.
In software as a service, what is that? And software as a service are things like Office 365, or maybe your organization's using Salesforce as a good example.
Correct.
Or some companies use internal programs for development, Basecamp, things of that nature, CRM tools and all that. That was really the essential start, let's say, of the as a service model, right? I'm going and I'm subscribing to something and I'm getting it. Going back to even like internet service providers, right? It's as a service.
Right.
And then we kind of rolled into this whole concept of, okay, that's great. We're providing all this stuff. We have all this software offerings. Now, how do we kind of equate that into something else tangible? The physical stuff. I need to run my business still. How am I actually going to access the software that I'm getting?
So, James, there's some benefits for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, a while ago, I still remember when I'd go out and buy a piece of software, you get the software, but as a service model, like let's take 365, you get all your normal Office products, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But as a service, that means like every year I hated that. Every year I'd have to go out and buy like the newest and best, right?
Well, it's like, think about like we use Mac,
right?
And this is just an easily equivalent. So like Mac or PC, right? In the Mac world, I mean, I think everybody out here right now, for the most part, that maybe is in the Mac world, understands that they run OS X.
Right.
Well, we haven't heard about anything else since OS X. I mean, They just talk about like the next version or something, but it's all OS X,
right? Which
is what Windows 10 did, right? Windows 10, we just talk about Windows 10. Before, we used to have to worry about like 95 with Service Pack 1, 95 Service Pack 2, 98. The infamous Windows ME that nobody ran.
Well, it was the same with the Office products.
Yeah, same way with the Office products too. So like in Office, you had the same thing. You went and you bought it, and that's great. 3 years later or 2 years later, you're going out buying the next thing, or hoping a Service Pack came out.
Right.
And that's what as a service got rid of. It eliminated that gap in upgrades where now somebody's running a version that's 10 versions behind because they don't have access to the newest one.
And so with as a service, though, every time that a new version comes out, with as a service, you get that version.
Right, and that equates to what you were saying a minute ago, like hardware as a service. Same concept.
Right.
We're taking something and we're giving it to a client under an as a service type of model. Maybe it's a server, maybe it's a firewall, maybe it's a business continuity solution, and we're putting this in an as a service model so that way every 1 to 2 years they're getting the next latest and greatest coming out. It eliminates the capital expense. It gets rid of this, okay, I have to go out and spend, let's say $20,000 on new PCs for my office, and instead I can spend that same amount of money, or maybe even a little bit less, and only be locked in for 2 years, and then I can turn around and I can refresh everything 2 years down the road. Always having the latest and greatest, always providing the best solution in terms of operational efficiency.
Well, that also helps with failures too, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about operational efficiency as an example, let's say something goes down, computer breaks. There was a cost associated with replacing that. In an as-a-service model, there's not. That device breaks. That device needs to be maintained. That device needs certain software upgrades and all that. There's no cost associated with that. It's all rolled into one package, easily digestible. so you can plan and budget for it. You don't have to make this plan that every 3 to 5 years you have this massive capital expense that you weren't anticipating or didn't plan for because Microsoft decided they were going to stop supporting that version of operating system you're running, as an example.
But as like a small to medium business,
Yeah.
right? I think that would probably be very beneficial as a business owner, especially for your kind of back of the house infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those components, they're not cheap.
No. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you talk about like our firewall solutions as an example.
Right.
If we walk in and we're able to provide as a service model for, let's say, $99.95 a month, and that device costs, say, $2,400 to purchase,
Right.
but that license is only good for 3 years on it.
Right.
That means that at the end of the 2 years that you've ended up paying for it, you already have to look at the licensing for at the third year anyways.
Right.
But the difference is that now you're assuming all the risk. Let's say something happens to that device, or let's say it needs to be upgraded because the hardware solution changes. I mean, you look at iPhones, really good example.
Right.
You think about like T-Mobile and the way T-Mobile's kind of gone with cellular handsets. When you're in this model of, okay, every year to 2 years new hardware comes out, you're constantly chasing the next best thing.
Oh yeah.
So as a business owner, you don't want your employees running around, let's say, with the old dirty iPhone that's 5 years old. Now they're telling you they can't get their email.
Right.
You want them to have the latest and greatest.
Sure.
The problem is that under the old model, with cell phones as an example, you were paying up front for the cost of that device, and then they were discounting your monthly bill. You didn't have a way to get out of it. You said, okay, well, great. Now if I want the new iPhone, I can't do that. Now with the new model, you're paying on a monthly device payment. So you want the new iPhone, you go turn that in and you get the new one. It's the same way with as a service. And as a service, we're doing the same thing. You want the newest, the latest, the greatest. You need it for your employees to sustain. You need it for your business. You're having an issue with that hardware, whatever it is. It's a simple phone call. Hey, I need to switch this out for the next thing.
Right.
And then you pay a one fee to go ahead and have us come out, switch it out. But the monthly doesn't change. You just keep on rocking and rolling through it.
So, that's in my opinion, I think that's a good way to stay on top of cutting edge technology.
Right.
And not get locked into something that, because technology changes so quickly.
Yeah.
If I go out and I go to, another supplier and I buy a firewall and a switch and my access points and kind of everything that I need to run an office,
right,
and I outright purchase those items, I'm kind of locked in. And like I said, I mean, that's a good investment.
right,
And then, a year or 2 years down the road, that technology changed.
right,
And we talked about this. You
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I just recently at a client's that we're looking at getting some access points.
Yep.
And some Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you kind of tell us how that?
Yeah. So I'll flip it a little bit on you, and I'm done with that
Okay.
too. So, going into access points is a really good example in this client that we're dealing with. It's an evolving need. They're going to open up. They're going to have a need to support about 200 or so wireless users. The reality is that in 2 to 3 years, they may need to support 600 to 1,200 users.
Right.
And so then how do you buy something now? If you were going to buy it, how do you buy it now and know that in 3 or 4 years it's going to meet the needs that you have in 3 or 4 years? It's almost physically impossible to do. You can't
Right.
predict that growth pattern. And so the as a service model really gets you into that position where you're able to be flexible, which is where I'm going to go flipping on you, because you were a small business owner for a while. I know.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think there's anybody that watches our web broadcasts that is not maybe let's say a small or medium-sized business owner and hasn't experienced this. But the reality is business needs change.
Oh yeah.
You could go from having 10 employees to needing 25 employees back down to, okay, I have 8 now.
Right.
All in a period of like 3 years.
Sure.
And so now you're caught in this buy cycle. I had to buy this, I had to buy this, I had to buy this. Now you've bought to support your 25 employees, and now you go down to 8.
Oh, it's
So what do you do with the
Right.
other 17 PCs you bought?
Right. Right.
There's no value there. Now it's hitting your tax line. It's a capital expense. You already paid for it.
Sure.
You have no value behind it.
Right.
You're not using it. And then you fast forward 3 years down the road, and now you're back up to 45 employees, but you have to replace all those computers that are 4 years old at that point.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, that's really what as a service allows you to do. It gives you that flexibility to be
Sure.
able to ramp up, ramp down, change needs, adjust, meet kind of that adaptation of hardware and software requirements in the world. So, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, if you're in a small business, you have to be flexible. And having a partner like DataTech lets you do that.
Right.
You can't just go, if you go online right now and you start searching, you're not going to find as a service modeling and offerings across the whole gamut of IT. And when I say the whole gamut, I mean PCs, firewalls, business continuity, servers as a service. I mean, if there's something that we sell, you can get it as a service. There's nothing that we sell that you can't get as a service.
Right.
And that's something that differentiates us from our competition, I think. It differentiates us from the marketplace in general. So it's important to have a good IT partner that's flexible with that.
Yeah. So kind of we throw those acronyms around all the time, as a service,
Right.
MSP. So it's kind of hard to define, really what those are. And I think that's why we're taking the time to kind of break this down to everybody and kind of really figure out what that means.
Right.
That's got to be beneficial, especially for a starting company, a new
Right.
business, especially
Right.
that has a lot of capital outlay to even start the business.
Yeah. I mean, to know that if you have a good, solid IT partner, they can come in, they can provide an as-a-service model for your hardware requirements and for also your software requirements for your company, and then all you're going to have is a low entry point, let's say a setup fee for us to set it up and deploy the hardware. It's a lot easier to digest. It's a lot easier on the pocketbook, especially as a small business or a medium-sized business, to be able to say, okay, I can budget for this. The capital expense side of it, it ends up being a scary proposition because
Sure.
you don't really know what you're in for until you get the bill, and then you look at the bill and you say, how am I going to pay it?
Right.
When you're able to say, okay, it's a monthly fee,
Right.
it's a little different. It's like, okay, I need to pay this month, and we're good.
We kind of started off our conversation by saying that really the software companies kind of started this model, right?
Yeah.
And so really this is something that, it's going to happen. Whether we want it to or not, it's
Right.
going to happen. And we're kind of seeing the emergence of that, I think, with the whole 365 through Microsoft.
Right.
I mean, that's just where it's going. I mean,
Well, you think about, and I know we're going to be short on time, but you think about the as a service model in terms of hardware as a service. Right now, if when you're going and you're looking at outsourcing your IT or bringing in an IT services company to help you with the overall management of your network, that's a monthly cost. It's a monthly cost, but the reality is it doesn't get rid of the fixed costs that you have every 3 or 4 years in capital expense for your infrastructure. You still have to buy things, you still have to maintain it. The confusion lies in the fact that you have to track that on your budget, and you also have to track your monthly costs now on a budget.
Sure.
If you're able to roll that all into one billing cycle and say, okay, this is what I pay.
It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier to budget it. It's a lot easier to plan for it.
Right.
It moves it from a capital expense to an operating expense. From a simplification standpoint, there's such thing as overcomplicating things. It
Right.
makes it very simple. It's
KISS.
simple and easy to digest. Yeah, KISS. So, that's the important part behind as a service. You're getting rid of all the complications. And you're saying, okay, I know that I pay this amount per month. It covers all my PCs. It covers all of my IT security. It covers all my software solutions. It covers everything, and it's in one payment.
So really quick, something else I just want to bring up. So let's say that I'm doing a server as a service, and I need some changes to that service or that server. I mean, that's part of that?
Yes.
It
So
is.
inside the as a service model, you're going to get an initial offering for your PC or your server.
Right.
It's going to include all your software on that server itself. The only thing it's not going to include is a line of business application. Some companies have specific applications they use,
Sure.
but it will include the base platform, everything you need, the whole foundation for your
Wow.
house, basically.
Wow.
If somebody decides they need to upgrade that foundation, they need to make it thicker, let's say, then we go ahead and we're able to say, okay, this is the cost associated with upgrading. It's just like adding extra layers of concrete.
So it grows with the business. It can grow.
Yeah, it can grow with the business, and we
Wow.
have the resources to do it. And it's a matter of phone call, and a few days later, we're out there upgrading that equipment, and you're good to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting close to time. So I'm going to let James wrap up, because if he didn't wrap up, he does it every week. And if he didn't do it this week, I think I'd be disheartened and sad. So I'm going to let him close this episode.
Well, thank you for joining us on our Facebook Live broadcast today. Thanks to Todd for being as a service.
I was.
I made a joke with Todd earlier. We were talking about what as a service means, and the acronym is AS at the end.
You're going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. So this is TAS. He's Todd as a service.
Todd as a service.
We'll see you
That's
guys
great.
next week.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.